The night my stepbrother sold my name to the wrong men, I learned humiliation looks a lot like 5-star marble and a borrowed black dress. I should have stayed home. Instead, I walked into the Grand Mercer Hotel like I still had dignity left to protect. Ethan texted me 10 minutes earlier. Come alone. We need to fix this. Fix this. As if stealing my identity, draining my emergency account, and tying me to a debt I never made was just a messy family mistake. I found him near the champagne bar on the penthouse level, laughing with 2 men in tailored suits while I stood there feeling cheap and furious. You used my name, I said. My voice came out sharp enough to cut. Ethan's smile twitched. Lower your voice, Claire. No. You lower yours. You dragged me into something dirty, and now collectors are calling me at work. One of the men looked me over like I was paperwork that had started talking. Ethan took my elbow and pulled me aside. Hard. I said I would handle it. By handing them me? The words hit him. Good. For half a second, I saw guilt. Then fear crushed it. He leaned in. Just do not make a scene. That was beat 1. Betrayal. Public, polished, and expensive. Beat 2 came fast. Ethan stepped back when one of the suited men moved closer. Too close. Miss Bennett, he said, smooth as glass. Since your brother cannot cover the transfer, perhaps you can clarify your role. My stomach dropped. Ethan would not meet my eyes. That was my answer. He had already offered me up. I yanked my arm free. I do not have a role. You do now, the man said. I did the only smart thing left. I ran. Past the bar. Past a ballroom full of donors and fake smiles. Past a woman who gasped when I nearly hit her tray. My heels slipped on polished stone, but panic kept me moving. Then I shoved through a private corridor door marked restricted access, and the whole air changed. Quieter. Colder. Guarded. Beat 3. I had escaped one trap and crashed straight into another. 2 men in dark suits stepped in front of me. A third voice came from the end of the hall. Deep. Controlled. Dangerous enough to stop me cold. Who let her up here? He stood. Beneath a row of low gold lights, tall, perfectly still, one hand in his pocket like nothing in this world surprised him. Luca Moretti. I knew the name. Everybody in New York knew the name. Power in a tailored coat. A man people smiled around and feared the second he turned away. My pulse went wild for a brand new reason. He looked at me once, then past me, where the men Ethan left me with were now pushing through the corridor doors. Luca's expression did not change. Interesting, he said. Beat 4. The collision. The danger I ran from had found me. The danger I ran into looked worse. One of the men behind me forced a polite smile. Private family matter, Mr. Moretti. Luca's gaze slid back to me. Calm. Hard. Unreadable. Is she with you? I should have lied. I should have said yes and gotten out of there. Instead I heard myself say, no. His eyes sharpened. Just slightly. Enough to terrify me. Enough to make me wonder which mistake would ruin me faster, the one standing behind me or the one now standing in front of me. Then Luca said, bring her in. I did not know if that was a rescue, a claim, or the beginning of something far worse. Luca Moretti did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The 2 men in dark suits closed around me, not rough, just final, and guided me through a set of double doors into a private suite that looked less like a hotel room and more like a throne with walls. I stopped 3 feet inside and turned fast. I am not staying here. Luca walked in last. Calm. Precise. Untouchable. You already are. Beat 1 hit hard and clean. He did not ask if I was scared. He acted like fear was just another fact in the room. One of his men murmured something in Italian near the door. Luca listened, then looked at me again. Your name is Claire Bennett. Not a question. You know my name. Great. Then you also know I do not belong here. That depends, he said. On what? His eyes did not soften. On whether you wandered onto my floor by accident or someone sent you. The insult landed exactly where it was meant to. Bait. Set up. Disposable girl. My face burned. My stepbrother used my name. For a debt transfer. I came here to confront him. That is it. Luca said nothing for a beat too long. Then, people lie to me every night. Beat 2. The pressure shifted from the men outside to the man in front of me. He asked for Ethan's full name, where I worked, where I lived, when the collectors started calling, what accounts had been touched. Cold questions. Fast questions. I answered anyway because every time I stopped, he filled the silence with that stare. At last, one of his men stepped forward with a phone. Boss. Ethan Bennett is tied to a shell company flagged last month. Rival side. Luca took the phone, scanned it once, and set it down. Something in the room tightened. He looked at me like I had just become either more dangerous or more useful. I hated that I could not tell which. You expect me to believe you walked into a laundering chain by accident? I expect nothing from you, I shot back. I just want to leave. Beat 3 came with a sharp electronic click. Then another. The suite doors locked. One guard touched his earpiece. Security breach on the east corridor. Floor is sealed. I stared at the door, then at Luca. You have got to be kidding me. He did not look surprised. That was the worst part. He looked prepared. No one leaves this floor until I know who pushed you into my night, Claire. My pulse kicked hard. Trapped with the wrong men had been one thing. Trapped with Luca Moretti felt worse because part of me already knew he was the one man in this building nobody else could push. Beat 4 was the real hook. He poured himself a drink, untouched by the tension crushing my lungs, then said the one thing that made the room go colder. If your brother is tied to my rival, then you did not stumble in here. His gaze pinned me where I stood. Someone wanted you on my floor. The lock on the suite door clicked again around midnight, and by then I hated the sound of Luca Moretti's world. It meant control. It meant I still was not free. Beat 1 started with my phone vibrating across the marble table. Ethan. My chest turned hard. I grabbed it before Luca could. The call connected to noise, breath, traffic. Then Ethan's voice, thin and panicked. Claire, listen to me. I did not know it would reach him. You used my name, I snapped. You sold me out. I was trying to buy time. With my life? Silence. Then a curse. Then, do not go home. They know your address. The line cut dead. I stood there shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Luca did not ask if I was all right. He only said, speaker. I looked at him with pure hate. You do not get to command me. You are already in it, he said. Start understanding that. Beat 2 landed harder. One of his men stepped in with new intel. My apartment building had been accessed. My emergency account had been emptied. My name had already been circulated as collateral in a debt chain. Collateral. I laughed once, and it came out broken. He did not just ruin me, I said. He priced me. The room went still. I should have held it together. I did not. Fury hit first. Then shame. Then that awful helpless grief I had been fighting since the first collector called my job. I worked for everything I had, I said, voice cracking. Every dollar. Every shift. And he threw me into this like I was nothing. Luca watched me too closely. Too quietly. You are not nothing, he said. It should have helped. It only made my eyes burn. Beat 3 was the worst kind of collapse. Not dramatic. Not pretty. I turned away because I refused to cry at him, but my body betrayed me anyway. He crossed the room, stopped close enough to change the air, and said, low and steady, "Look at me, Claire." I did. That was the mistake. There was no pity in his face. No mockery either. Just that brutal focus, like once he decided something mattered, he did not look away. "Whoever put your name in this," he said, "wanted you exposed." "Congratulations," I whispered. It worked. Something shifted between us then. Not trust. Not safety. Something more dangerous. The kind that forms when two people are standing at the edge of the same fire. Beat 4 came in silence. No grand speech. No tenderness I could name. Just exhaustion, rage, and the terrible gravity of a man I should have feared more than I did. When he touched my face, it felt less like comfort and more like surrender colliding with instinct. Morning came too fast. Cold light. Colder room. Luca was already dressed, already distant, already wearing that ruthless control like last night had never happened. He did not look at me when he said, "A car will take you home." That should have been the end. But something in his tone told me the real damage had only started. The man who broke through every wall I had left did not even walk me out himself. Beat 1 started with his assistant handing me an envelope in the back of a black town car like I was a problem already processed. "Mr. Moretti arranged a temporary hotel stay and emergency funds," she said. Her voice was polished. Clean. Impersonal. I stared at the envelope on my lap and felt something hot and stupid rise in my throat. Not heartbreak. Worse. Humiliation. Last night had cracked something open in me, and this morning Luca sealed it shut with money and distance. "Tell Mr. Moretti I do not need his pity," I said. The assistant did not blink. "This is not pity, Miss Bennett. It is precaution." I almost laughed. Precaution. Right. A controlled night. A controlled exit. A controlled mess. I pushed half the cash back toward her. "Then tell him I am not for sale." Her expression shifted just enough to show surprise. Mr. Moretti did not imply that. He did not have to. Beat 2 hit the second I stepped onto my block in Queens. My building door hung crooked. The lock was split. My stomach dropped so fast it hurt. I ran up 2 flights and froze in the doorway of my apartment. Drawers yanked open. Couch cushions gutted. Files dumped across the floor. My old laptop gone. My tiny lockbox cracked open and empty. I stood there staring at the wreckage of my life and felt rage come first, then shame, then fear. Someone had not just found me. They had searched me. I grabbed my phone and called Ethan. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. "You coward," I whispered into the wrecked room. "You left me here with this." Beat 3 came like a blade sliding in after the wound. I logged into my shared emergency account from my phone, hands shaking so badly I missed the password twice. When it finally opened, the balance read $0.17. Every extra shift. Every birthday cash tip from my aunt before she died. Every dollar I saved for rent, emergencies, survival. Gone. I called the bank. The rep confirmed the transfer had been authorized through linked credentials. Ethan had not just dragged me into danger. He had emptied my last way out. I sank onto the floor among overturned papers and pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from screaming. Then a wave of nausea rolled through me. Sharp. Sudden. Mean. I shut my eyes and waited for it to pass, but it only got worse. I told myself it was stress. No sleep. Too much adrenaline. Too much Luca still under my skin. But as I sat there in my wrecked apartment, breathing through a sickness I could not explain, one thought landed hard enough to stop my heart for a second. What if the real thing Luca Moretti left me with was not money at all? Beat 1 began with me kneeling on my bathroom floor at 6:30 in the morning, staring at a pregnancy test I bought from the only drugstore open on Roosevelt Avenue. I had told myself the nausea was stress. No sleep. No money. Too much damage in too few hours. But the second pink line came in hard and clear, and every excuse died with it. I sat back against the tub and laughed once, sharp and hollow. No, I whispered. Then louder. No, my hand moved to my stomach before I could stop it. One night. One reckless, impossible night with the most dangerous man I had ever met, and now my whole life had split in two. Beat 2 hit inside a walk-in clinic that smelled like bleach and cheap coffee. The nurse was kind in the way people are kind when they think you might break if they move too fast. She checked my chart, asked questions, then smiled gently. You are early, but yes. You are pregnant. I stared at her like she had spoken another language. Pregnant. The word did not sound real attached to me. Not in my wrecked apartment. Not with my bank account emptied. Not with Ethan missing and Luca Moretti already gone cold by morning. Do you have support? She asked. I almost said yes. I almost said the father is powerful enough to move cities if he wants to. Instead I said, not really. The truth burned more than the test ever could. Beat 3 came with the hardest choice so far. I sat on a metal bench outside the clinic with a folder in my lap and Luca's name pounding through my head like a threat. Tell him, and I become a complication he controls. Do not tell him, and I carry this alone while his world keeps closing around me. I could already hear his voice. Cold. Precise. Calculating risk before feeling. I folded the paperwork and shoved it deep into my bag. Not yet, I told myself. He does not get this yet. It sounded strong. It felt like fear. Beat 4 arrived as I stepped off the curb. A black SUV sat across the street, engine running. Not flashy. Not random either. A man in sunglasses looked up from his phone at the exact second I looked at him. He did not wave. He did not move. He just watched. My pulse kicked hard. Maybe he was with Luca. Maybe he was with the men who tore through my apartment. Maybe it did not matter. Because for the first time since that hotel night, I understood something worse than panic. I was not the only one who knew my life had changed. Someone else was already watching me like they knew exactly what I was carrying. The man in the black SUV was still there when I came out of the pharmacy 2 hours later. Beat 1 started with denial. Mine. I crossed the street without looking at him, groceries in one hand, clinic papers buried deep in my tote, every nerve in my body screaming anyway. He got out before I reached the corner. Not rushed. Not loud. Just deliberate. Miss Bennett. I kept walking. I do not know you. You do not need to. His tone stayed smooth. Wrong kind of smooth. We only need a signature. Clarify that Ethan Bennett acted with your authorization, and this all gets simpler. I stopped so fast my bag swung against my leg. Authorization. There it was. The trap in clean legal language. I never authorized anything. He held out a folder. Then help us understand why your name is on every transfer. Shame hit first. Then fear. Then fury. They had taken my brother's betrayal and wrapped it around my throat like it was mine. Beat 2 came when they boxed me in without touching me. One on the curb. One near the alley mouth. Public street. Bright daylight. And somehow I still felt cornered. I am not signing anything, I said. The first man gave me a thin smile. You may want to reconsider. Especially now. His gaze dropped, just once, toward my stomach. Cold went through me so fast I nearly staggered. They knew. Maybe not everything. Enough. I tightened both arms over my tote like that could hide the truth back inside me. Back off. Miss Bennett, he said, lowering his voice, your brother created a problem. We are offering you a graceful way out. By making me take the fall? My voice cracked sharp and loud enough to turn one passerby's head. No one stopped. Of course they did not. This was Manhattan. People walked faster when trouble looked expensive. Beat 3 hit with the sound of tires stopping too close to the curb. A black car. Familiar. Silent. The rear door opened first, and then Luca stepped out like the whole street belonged to him. No rush. No confusion. Just that brutal stillness that made everyone else look temporary. The men around me changed instantly. Straighter backs. Shorter breaths. Luca's eyes landed on the folder in my hand, then on the man who handed it to me. You approached her without permission. Not a question. The man tried a smile. We were only clearing up paperwork. Luca took the folder from my frozen hand, glanced at the first page, and shut it. You do not clear anything through her. He turned to me then. One look. Hard. Assessing. Were you followed from the clinic? My throat tightened. He knew about the clinic. Of course he did. Why are you tracking me? I shot back. Why are they, he said. Beat 4 was the sting I should have expected. Luca opened the passenger door of his car and said, get in. Not please. Not are you all right? Just control. Just certainty. Heat rose behind my eyes, hot and humiliating. He did not come because he chose me. He came because he knew. Because whatever had changed inside me did not belong only to me anymore. I hated that my pulse still steadied when he stepped closer. I hated that safety, wrapped in him, felt so much like surrender. I slid into the car without another word. Luca shut the door, looked once at the men on the sidewalk, and said the sentence that split my chest right down the middle. From this point on, she is under my protection. I should have felt relieved. Instead I stared out the window and thought the same terrible thing all the way into his world. He did not come for me. He came for the child. The gates opened onto a stone estate 30 miles outside the city, and I understood the message before the car even stopped. This was not shelter. It was containment dressed up as luxury. Beat 1 began when Luca stepped out first and one of his men opened my door like I was already part of the system. I stayed seated. I am not living here. Luca looked down at me, unreadable as ever. For now, you are. That is not your decision to make. It became mine the second someone tracked you from a clinic. The words hit hard because they were true, and I hated him for being right. I got out anyway, jaw tight, pride bleeding from every step. The house was enormous. Quiet. Guarded. Beautiful in the coldest possible way. Like Luca. Beat 2 came inside a sitting room bigger than my whole apartment. A woman with silver hair introduced herself as Mrs. DeLuca, the house manager, and told me a doctor would arrive in the morning. A doctor. Security. New clothes already waiting upstairs. Every detail handled. Every choice erased. I turned to Luca. You do not get to rebuild my life like a crime scene. He did not flinch. Good. Then stop acting like I should thank you. His eyes sharpened. I do not need gratitude, Claire. I need you alive. My chest tightened at that. Not because it was soft. Because it was not. It was control. Pure and ruthless. And part of me still steadied under it. Beat 3 hit when I pushed again. How long am I supposed to stay locked up here? Luca moved closer, not enough to touch, just enough to make the room feel smaller. Until I know who is moving against you. You mean against the baby. I watched that land. Small. Precise. He did not deny it. Both, he said at last. I laughed once, bitter and low. That is a convenient answer. For the first time, something almost like irritation cracked his mask. You think this is about convenience? I think you came because I am carrying something that matters to you. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then Luca said, I am investigating Ethan, the leak, and every person who touched your name. Until I have answers, you do not leave without protection. It should have sounded reasonable. It sounded like a cage. I folded my arms over myself and looked away before he could see how badly that hurt. Beat 4 came softer, which somehow made it worse. Mrs. DeLuca asked if I wanted tea. I said no. My stomach turned anyway. Luca noticed. Of course he did. He notices everything. You will eat, he said. Do not start. That was not a suggestion. I shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. He held it without blinking. Power. That was his native language. Mine was refusal, even when it cost me. He turned to leave, then paused at the door as one of his men stepped in and murmured something too low for me to catch. Luca's whole body went still. He looked back at me, colder than before. We have a new problem. My pulse jumped. What now? He held my gaze for one long, brutal second. Someone inside the family already knows you are here. The next morning, I found Luca in the back garden with an old woman in a wheelchair and sunlight all over his hands. Beat 1 started there, in the one place I did not expect him to look human. He crouched beside her, adjusting a blanket over her knees with a care so quiet it almost made me angry. This man who ordered guards, sealed gates, and rearranged my life without asking was speaking softly about roses and weather like he belonged to a different world. Mrs. DeLuca noticed me first. Claire, this is Nana Sophia. Luca stood slowly, his face cooling by the second. Too late. I had already seen it. You have a grandmother? I asked before I could stop myself. His eyes narrowed. You sound surprised. I am. Nana Sophia smiled at me like she knew exactly how dangerous that answer was. He only pretends to be made of stone. Beat 2 came with breakfast and a doctor I never requested. I should have refused both. Instead, I sat in a sunlit dining room, letting a prenatal specialist check my vitals while Luca stood near the window taking calls about people I was clearly not supposed to ask about. When the doctor left, I stared at the fruit, the tea, the vitamins lined up beside my plate, and something in me softened before I could stop it. Not trust. Just fatigue. Thank you, I said quietly. Luca turned from the window as if the word surprised him more than gunfire ever could. For what? For arranging the doctor. He held my gaze for one long second. I arrange what is necessary. There it was again. The wall. Still, I caught something beneath it. A hesitation. A crack. Small, but real. Beat 3 shattered the moment before it could breathe. A sleek black car rolled up the drive just after noon, and a woman stepped out wearing cream cashmere and confidence like she had never once entered a room where she did not belong. Tall. Blonde. Beautiful in the polished, old money way that made me instantly aware of every cheap seam in my own borrowed clothes. Mrs. DeLuca's whole posture changed. Respect. Familiarity. History. The woman smiled when she saw Luca. Not uncertain. Not careful. Intimate. You vanished without returning my calls, she said, kissing the air beside his cheek like this house, this garden, this man had all belonged to her first. Then she looked at me. Slow. Precise. Measured. So this is her. I felt that sentence everywhere. In my throat. In my spine. In the humiliating silence that followed. Luca's face went hard enough to warn storms away. Vivian, he said, voice flat, this is not a good time. But she barely looked at him. Her eyes stayed on me, cool and assessing. I had to come. The whole city is already whispering. She smiled again, and this one cut. I wanted to see for myself what kind of woman could create such an inconvenient situation. My fingers tightened around the arm of the chair. I should have looked away. I did not. Then you should not waste the trip, I said. You are seeing her. Vivian's expression did not change, but something dangerous flashed underneath it. Luca stepped between us then, not gentle, not warm, just final. Protection from him always felt like another kind of command. And somehow that only made it worse. Because as Vivian tilted her head and gave him a look full of private history, I understood exactly what I was in this house. Not chosen. Not claimed. A complication. And judging by the way she looked at me, I had just met the woman who thought I should never have been here at all. Luca did not ask if I wanted to attend the charity dinner. He informed me. Beat 1 started with a garment bag laid across my bed and Mrs. DeLuca saying, almost apologetically, "It will look worse if you do not appear." Worse. That word stayed with me all the way into Manhattan. I sat beside Luca in the back of a black car, staring at the skyline through tinted glass while silence pressed between us like a third passenger. Is this about charity, I asked, or damage control? Luca adjusted his cuff without looking at me. Tonight is about appearances. I gave a small, bitter laugh. At least you are honest. His jaw tightened, just once. Do not mistake honesty for kindness, Claire. I turned to the window before he could see how much that stung. Beat 2 hit the second we stepped into the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers. White orchids. Women in gowns that cost more than my old yearly rent. Men who smiled with their mouths and calculated with their eyes. I felt every stare land on me before a single person spoke. Then the whispers started. Soft. Precise. Cruel because they did not need to be loud. That is her. She looks younger than I expected. A scandal in heels. I kept my shoulders straight anyway. That was the only thing I still owned. Vivian found me near the champagne tower before Luca could. Of course she did. You wore blue, she said, smiling as if we were friends. Bold choice. Most women in your position try not to be noticed. I met her gaze. Then you must be disappointed I made it through the door. Her smile sharpened. Not disappointed. Curious. Luca has always been careful about what he brings into a room. Into. Not beside. Not with. Into. Like I was an object, not a woman. Beat 3 came when an older woman on Vivian's arm looked me over and asked, "And what exactly do you do, dear?" I knew what she meant. What are you, other than pregnant and inconvenient? Heat climbed up my neck, but before I could answer, Vivian said lightly, "At the moment, she is keeping everyone very busy." A few people laughed. Quiet laughter. Polished laughter. The kind that leaves no bruise anyone else can see. I put my glass down before I dropped it. Excuse me. I walked fast, not because I was weak, but because I refused to break open in front of people who would call it entertainment. I made it to the side terrace doors before Luca caught up. Claire. I kept going. Do not. He moved in front of me anyway, blocking the exit with that calm, infuriating control. What did she say? Nothing I did not already know. My throat tightened. I do not belong here. For the first time all night, something in his face shifted. Harder. Colder. Not at me. Around me. Beat 4 landed when one of Vivian's friends drifted too close behind us and said, just loud enough, "This whole thing is embarrassing." Luca turned so smoothly it took me a second to realize what had changed. The room itself seemed to pull back. Then leave, he said. Not sharp. Not shouted. Worse. Final. The woman froze. No one laughed now. Luca looked at the small circle gathering near us, then at Vivian, and his voice dropped another degree. No one speaks about her like that again. My pulse kicked hard. Protection. Public. Unmistakable. And somehow it only made the confusion worse, because when he offered me his arm a second later, he still did not explain Vivian, did not explain us, did not explain why defending me in public felt easier for him than telling me the truth in private. I stood there in a room full of people staring at us and realized humiliation was not even the worst part anymore. The worst part was that for one reckless second, with Luca beside me and the room finally silent, I almost felt chosen. The first time I understood that my pregnancy was not just a scandal but a weapon, I was standing outside Luca's study, listening to powerful men discuss my child like a future war. Beat 1 began after midnight, back at the estate, when I passed the half-open door and heard my name in a voice I did not recognize. Older. Sharper. You let this get too visible, Luca. I stopped before I could think better of it. Another voice answered. Luca's. Flat. Controlled. I said I am handling it. Then the older man again. A pregnant stranger is not a private inconvenience anymore. It is a liability. Liability. The word hit like ice water. I should have walked away. I stayed. If the press gets worse, the man continued, your position weakens. Vittorio is already asking whether you are stable enough to lead. My breath caught. Lead. This was bigger than gossip. Bigger than Vivian's poisoned smiles. I was not just an embarrassment in Luca's world. I was being weighed as damage against his power. Beat 2 came when the door opened and Luca found me there. No surprise on his face. Just that brutal awareness, like he had already calculated how much I heard. The older man inside glanced at me once, dismissive and cold, then left without introduction. Luca watched him go, then shut the door. You should be asleep. I almost laughed. And missed the part where my baby becomes a boardroom problem? His gaze sharpened. Do not use that tone with me. Then do not talk about my child like an asset under review. For 1 second, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Not anger alone. Pressure. The kind that comes from being pulled in 10 directions and refusing to break in front of anyone. You overheard part of a conversation, he said. I heard enough. Beat 3 landed when he did not deny it. He did not say no, Claire, that is not what this is. He only stepped closer and said, low and final, what is happening around you is not simple. You need to understand that. I folded my arms over myself, suddenly cold. I understand perfectly. Your family thinks I am a threat. My family thinks in terms of leverage. And what do you think? That question stayed between us like a blade. Too direct. Too dangerous. Luca's jaw tightened. I think someone leaked information they should not have. Not an answer. Of course not. He never gave me the one thing I wanted. Truth without strategy. Beat 4 came with a knock at the side entrance an hour later. One of Luca's men brought someone in through the rain. Soaked coat. Split lip. Eyes wild. Ethan. My whole body went rigid. He saw me and looked like shame had finally learned my address. Claire, he said, voice breaking. You have to listen to me. I did not know how bad it was. I took 1 step back before I could stop myself. Luca moved beside me, silent as a threat. Ethan swallowed hard and looked between us. Vittorio's people made me do it, he said. They used my debt. They said if I got her name into the transfer chain, they could force a meeting, force pressure, force, his voice cracked. I did not know she was pregnant. The room went dead still. Luca did not move. I did not breathe. Ethan lifted shaking hands like that could make any of this cleaner. Claire, they said the point was never just you. My heart slammed once. Hard. Wrong. Then what was it? Ethan looked straight at Luca when he answered. It was the air. Ethan's voice shook, but his lies were still breathing. Beat 1 began with Luca's men taking him into the smaller sitting room off the hall while I stood there trying not to fall apart. My brother looked thinner. Worse. Like fear had finally started eating him back. He kept staring at me like guilt alone should open the door to forgiveness. It did not. Start talking, I said. My voice came out colder than I felt. Ethan swallowed hard. Vittorio's people found my debts 6 months ago. They said if I moved documents through your credentials, they would clear it. Luca said nothing. That was somehow worse than shouting. Ethan looked at him once, then back at me. I did not know who the transfers were really for. I swear. You knew enough, I shot back. You knew you were using me. Shame flashed across his face. Good. I wanted it to hurt. Beat 2 came when Ethan finally pulled a flash drive from inside his coat lining with shaking fingers. This is proof, he said. Account trails. Names. The offshore shell they used. I copied it before I ran. My pulse jumped. Proof. Real proof. Luca's hand moved first, but I stepped in and took it before he could. Ethan looked almost relieved. Claire, I came back for you. I laughed once, bitter and sharp. No. You came back because now they are done with you. He flinched. Then, softer, maybe both. For one reckless second, part of me wanted to believe he meant it. That some piece of the brother I grew up with was still alive under all this damage. There is a service alley behind the old church on Lexington, Ethan said quickly. I hid more files there. Physical copies. In case they found this. Luca's eyes narrowed. You should have led with that. Beat 3 hit before anyone could move. A sharp sound cracked outside. Then another. Not close enough to be chaos. Close enough to be pressure. One of Luca's guards pressed a hand to his earpiece. Movement by the south perimeter. Ethan went white. They found me. Luca stepped in front of me on instinct, all steel now, no softness anywhere. Get her upstairs, he ordered. No, I snapped. I am not leaving until he tells us everything. Luca did not even look at me. That was not a request. I hated that my body still registered the protection before my pride registered the command. Beat 4 came in the ugliest possible way. Ethan grabbed my wrist before the guard could move me. Claire, listen to me. Vivian knows more than Luca thinks. She has access to the offshore account. Luca's head snapped toward him. The room changed. Ethan saw it and pushed harder. The copies are in the alley. You need to get there before Vittorio's people do. Then Luca turned to me at exactly the wrong second and saw the flash drive already in my hand. His face went still. Too still. You took that before I could verify him, he said. Accusation. Cold and immediate. My chest tightened. Because it is my life on it. Or because you already knew he had it. The words landed like a slap. I stared at him, stunned, while alarms started rising quietly through the house. Ethan had finally brought me proof. And somehow Luca was looking at me like I had just hidden a meeting behind his back. Luca put guards outside my door before sunrise. Not 1. 4. Beat 1 started with the sound of a deadbolt turning on the outside and my last ounce of patience snapping with it. I yanked the door open so hard one of the guards straightened like I had pulled a fire alarm. Move. He did not. Mr. Moretti's orders, miss. I laughed in his face. I am not his prisoner. Behind me, my heart was pounding too fast, anger and humiliation tangling together. Until I could barely breathe around either one. I had spent my whole life being cornered by people who thought fear made them right. Ethan. The debt collectors. Men in suits. And now Luca. I marched downstairs, barefoot, furious, ready to tear through every inch of that polished house if I had to. I found him in the study, already dressed, already working, already acting like he had not just locked me in. "You do not get to do this," I said. He looked up once from a folder. Calm. Cold. Infuriating. I just did. Beat 2 hit like a collision. Because I took the drive? I demanded. Because Ethan came to me? Luca stood then, slow and deliberate, and the room seemed to tighten around his height, his stillness, his control. Because you keep underestimating what this is. And you keep treating me like I am too stupid to understand it. His eyes sharpened. I am treating you like the target you are. No, I snapped. You are treating me like a problem you can manage. That landed. I saw it. Small, fast, real. But instead of softening, he moved closer. Your brother arrived here with stolen proof, false tears, and men on his trail. You took evidence from his hand before I could secure it. Because it is my life on that drive. And my child's. There it was. The child. Again. Every time we got close to the wound, that was where he pressed. Not me. The baby. I folded my arms over my stomach without meaning to, and hated that he noticed. Beat 3 came quieter, which somehow made it worse. You think control is the same as trust, I said. It is not. Luca's jaw tightened. Trust does not stop bullets, Claire. And locks do not make me feel safe. That one hung between us. Too honest. Too raw. For one dangerous second, his expression shifted. Not soft. Never soft. But strained. Like I had named something he did not know how to fix. I am trying to keep you alive, he said, lower now. Then stop deciding everything for me. You do not have that luxury. Do not tell me what I do not have. My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated myself for that even more than I hated him. The room went still. Not because the fight was over. Because it was cutting deeper now. Beat 4 arrived with a sharp knock and one of Luca's men stepping into the study. Boss. Ethan is gone. All the air left my lungs. Luca's face changed instantly. Pure steel. How? Perimeter blind spot near the West Service Drive. He slipped out during the shift change. Luca's gaze swung to me so fast it felt like impact. Not wild. Worse. Controlled suspicion. Did you tell him anything after I left the room last night? The accusation hit hard enough to make my vision flash. Are you serious? Answer me. Rage burned through the hurt in one brutal wave. No. But thank you for confirming exactly what I am to you. He stepped forward. I stepped back. Distance. Immediate. Necessary. My chest felt tight, my throat tighter. Ethan was gone. The proof might be gone with him. And Luca was looking at me like trust had never even had a chance. By the time the doctor arrived, my anger had turned into something more dangerous. Exhaustion. Beat 1 began in the car on the way to a private prenatal office 40 minutes from the estate. Luca did not ride with me. Of course he did not. He sent 2 guards and a driver, like I was evidence being transferred. I stared out the window the whole time, replaying his last question over and over. Did you tell him anything? Not are you all right? Not I was wrong. Just suspicion in a tailored coat. By the time we reached the office, my head was pounding and my stomach felt wrong. The nurse led me into an exam room with pale blue walls and a fake smile. Stress can do a lot this early, she said kindly. I wanted to laugh. Stress had practically moved in with me. Beat 2 hit when the doctor frowned at the monitor and said, Claire, I need you to stay calm. No woman in history has ever calmed down after hearing that sentence. My hands went cold. What is wrong? It may be nothing, she said, which meant it was something. But your blood pressure is too high, and I do not like the cramping you reported. The room tilted. Just slightly. Enough. My first clear thought was not about Luca. Not Ethan. Not Vittorio. It was raw and immediate and terrifying. Please do not take this baby. From me. I gripped the edge of the exam table so hard my knuckles ached. Can you fix it? The doctor's voice stayed steady. I can help you if you let me. Then the door opened fast enough to pull the air with it. Luca. He should not have known yet. But there he was, coat still on, eyes already on me before the doctor finished turning. What happened? He asked. No greeting. No apology. Just that same brutal urgency he only ever showed when something truly mattered. Beat 3 changed the room. The doctor began explaining my stress levels, rest requirements, warning signs. Luca did not interrupt once. He stood beside the chair like a storm forced into stillness, listening to every word as if missing one might cost him everything. When the doctor stepped out to arrange additional labs, silence dropped in hard. I looked away first. You did not have to come. He answered too fast for the sentence to be strategic. Yes, I did. I turned back then. Really looked at him. His face was composed, but his hands were not. One was curled so tightly at his side the knuckles had gone white. Fear. Real fear. On Luca Moretti, it looked almost unreal. It is just stress, I said, though I did not believe it myself. His gaze cut to mine. Do not say just. 4 words. Flat. Controlled. But something in my chest shifted anyway. Beat 4 came after the doctor cleared me to leave with strict instructions for rest. Luca rode back with me this time. He said almost nothing. No explanation. No soft words. Just presence. Heavy. Silent. Unavoidable. Halfway home, I caught him glancing at me when he thought I was asleep, and the look on his face wrecked me more than any argument had. Because it was not cold. It was terrified. And that should have comforted me. It almost did. Until I remembered the truth waiting back at the estate. In Luca's world, fear never came without a plan. And I still had no idea what he would do if the only thing he was scared of losing was the child. I should have known peace in Luca Moretti's world never arrived alone. It always came carrying a blade behind its back. Beat 1 began just before dawn, when I woke in the guest room with my body still. Heavy from the stress scare and the house around me too quiet to trust. For one stupid second, I let myself remember the way Luca had looked at me in the car. Not cold. Not controlling. Afraid. It had almost felt personal. That was my first mistake. My second was getting out of bed. I heard voices at the end of the hall near the study. Low. Male. Controlled. I should have turned around. Instead I moved closer, stopping just before the half-closed door. A lawyer's voice drifted through first. Crisp. Expensive. If her condition worsens, we should prepare temporary guardianship language now. If anything happens to her, the child's custody must be secured immediately. I went cold all over. Then Luca. Flat. Calm. Draft it. Beat 2 hit before I could breathe through the first blow. The lawyer kept talking. Inheritance protections, succession recognition, maternal access restrictions in emergency circumstances. Restrictions. Maternal. Access. My hand flew to my stomach so fast it hurt. Luca did not interrupt. He did not say absolutely not. He did not say she is not an incubator in a legal crisis. He only said, I want every contingency covered. Contingency. That was what I was to him. Not a woman who nearly lost control in a clinic chair yesterday. Not the person whose fear he sat beside all the way home. Just risk. Just paperwork. Just the mother until the mother became inconvenient. I backed away before the floor could betray me. Beat 3 came quietly, which made it worse. No screaming. No shattered glass. Just the slow, ugly collapse of a hope I should never have fed. By breakfast, I had rebuilt every wall I had let weaken. When Mrs. DeLuca brought tea, I thanked her and said I wanted my laptop. When the house staff offered new clothes, I said I would manage with what I had. When one of Luca's men mentioned the prenatal doctor wanted reduced stress, I almost laughed. Reduced stress inside a gilded cage. I started making a list in my head. Documents. Cash. Contacts. A way out. If Luca wanted contingency plans, fine. So would I. Beat 4 arrived in the library just after noon. I was pretending to read when Luca walked in and stopped short, like he felt the difference before he saw it. You look tired, he said. I did not lift my eyes from the page. I am fine. He came closer. Claire. That name used to strike somewhere deeper. Now it felt dangerous. I finally looked up and gave him the calmest face I had. You do not have to check on me. I understand my role here now. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. His expression changed, small but sharp. Confusion first. Then suspicion. What does that mean? I closed the book gently and stood. It means I finally know what happens if I stop being useful. I walked past him before he could answer, but I felt him turn, felt the weight of his stare follow me down the hall. He thought I was pulling away out of stubbornness. He had no idea I was already planning how to disappear before he could ever take my child from me. I started building my escape in the same house where Luca thought he had already contained me. Beat 1 began in the library with a borrowed laptop, a new email address, and the last surviving pieces of the woman I used to be before Ethan, before debt, before Luca Moretti turned my life into a guarded perimeter. I uploaded my old design portfolio. Small branding jobs. Remote layout work. Anything legal. Anything mine. The screen blurred once when I realized how low I had fallen, begging strangers for freelance work while living inside a mansion I never chose. But shame was cheaper than dependence. I also found the number for a women's legal nonprofit in Brooklyn and saved it under a fake contact name. If Luca was drafting contingencies, then so was I. You do not get to own every exit, I whispered to the empty room. Beat 2 came that afternoon when I slipped into the side garden to make the call. The woman on the line had a steady voice, the kind that made you want to confess every terrible thing at once. I did not. I kept it simple. Unmarried. Pregnant. Unsafe legal imbalance. Need advice on maternal rights. She asked if the father was threatening me directly. I looked through the hedges toward the house, toward the men who never let me out of sight, and said, not in the way you mean. She offered a discreet consultation if I could get to the city. My pulse kicked hard. Hope. Thin, fragile, dangerous hope. Then I heard heels on stone. Behind me. Vivian. Of course. She did not ask what I was doing. She only smiled like she had already decided. Planning ahead, she asked. I hung up too fast. Listening at doors now? Her gaze dropped to my phone, then back to my face. I do not need to listen. Girls like you always panic once they realize what this world costs. Beat 3 hit when she took one elegant step closer and lowered her voice. Let me save you some pain. Take the money and disappear before this gets uglier. My whole body went cold. What money? She named a number so large it made me sick. Not because I wanted it. Because she thought it would work. You think I can be bought? I asked. Vivian's smile barely changed. I think everyone can. The smart ones just name the right price sooner. Rage burned through the fear in one clean line. Tell me something, I said. Did you practice sounding heartless, or were you just born polished? Something flashed in her eyes then. Brief. Mean. I was born understanding men like Luca do not build futures around accidents. She walked away before I could answer, leaving her poison sitting in my chest like truth I refused to swallow. Beat 4 arrived before dinner. Luca stepped into the study holding my phone. My stomach dropped so hard it hurt. He set the phone on the desk between us. You contacted a lawyer. Not a question. I lifted my chin anyway. Yes. His face went still in that dangerous way of his. Why? I almost laughed. Because I heard you plan for the day I stop being useful. Because I do not trust what your protection costs. Because every time I start to believe you care, you remind me power comes first. But what came out was simpler. Sharper. Because I would rather struggle alone than belong to you. The words landed. Hard. Luca's eyes darkened, not with softness, not with pain I could trust, but with something more dangerous. The fear of losing control. You think this is about ownership, he said quietly. I think it is about freedom, I fired back. And I think you are already planning how to take mine. The silence after that felt like standing on a ledge. Then Luca said the one thing that told me I had just pushed this farther than either of us could pull back from. If you are planning to run, Claire, understand this now. You will not make it far. By the time Luca told me to get dressed for the charity event, I already knew it was not an invitation. It was another controlled move in a war I had never chosen. Beat 1 began with me standing in the dressing room, one hand braced against the table, staring at a pale gold dress laid out by someone else's decision. Absolutely not, I said when Luca stepped into the doorway. He looked infuriatingly calm. Your doctor cleared limited public movement. This event is secure. I turned on him. Nothing around you is secure. It is just expensive. His jaw tightened, but he did not argue. Staying hidden makes you look weak. Weakness invites pressure. There it was again. Image. Strategy. Control. I should have refused. I almost did. Then I remembered Vivian's face, the lawyers, the custody language, the threat in Luca's voice when he warned I would not get far. If they wanted me invisible, maybe showing up was the one thing I could still choose. Fine, I said. But I walk in as myself. Not as your apology. Beat 2 hit the second I stepped out of the car in Manhattan. Flashbulbs exploded from nowhere. Not one camera. 10. Maybe more. My pulse kicked hard. How did they know? I snapped. Luca's expression went cold enough to cut glass. They should not have. That was answer enough. A leak. Deliberate. Ugly. Questions started flying before we reached the entrance. Claire, did you trap him? Is the baby even his? Are you getting paid to stay quiet? Public shame has a sound. It sounds like strangers deciding your life belongs to them. My vision blurred at the edges. I stopped walking. Big mistake. Beat 3 came fast and cruel. Someone shoved a phone too close. A headline flashed across the screen. Mystery woman hooks Mafia heir with secret pregnancy. I felt every ounce of blood drain from my face. Trap. Hook. Mystery woman. Not my name. Not my truth. Just a scandal packaged for sport. Move back, one of Luca's men barked, but the crowd only pressed harder. I could barely breathe. Then Luca was suddenly in front of me, one arm shielding my body, the other taking my elbow with ruthless certainty. Enough. He said. Not loud. Worse. Final. The cameras kept flashing anyway. Beat 4 was the line that changed everything. Luca turned, looked straight into the chaos, and said, no one approaches her again unless they are ready to answer to me. Silence hit like impact. Even the cameras hesitated for half a second. His hand stayed firm at my waist as he pulled me through the doors, all heat and danger and control. Safe. Exposed. Claimed. I hated that my knees almost gave out from relief. Inside the lobby, he released me too slowly to mean nothing. This was a setup, I said, breathless and furious. Yes, he said. His voice had gone deadly calm. And now everyone knows exactly where to strike. The internet decided who I was before I even got back to the estate. Beat 1 began with a wall of headlines glowing across every phone in the house. Gold digger. Trap. Mystery mother. Some people pitied me. More wanted me humiliated. Luca's public warning had not protected my name. It had turned me into a spectacle. Mrs. DeLuca switched off the television the second I walked in, but it was too late. I had already seen my face frozen under tabloid text, my body reduced to strategy and scandal. You should eat, she said gently. I almost laughed. So I can survive being publicly dissected? My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter a second later. Unknown number. Then another. Then another. People who never knew me suddenly felt entitled to me. Beat 2 hid in the study that evening, where Luca stood with 3 men in suits and a legal advisor talking in clipped, expensive language about optics, board pressure, donor fallout, and narrative control. Narrative control. I leaned against the doorway and felt something bitter twist inside me. Do I get a vote in my own narrative? Every head turned. Luca's men went silent. Luca did not. This is not the time. That is your favorite sentence when the truth gets inconvenient. One of the advisors cleared his throat. Miss Bennett, public perception may be stabilized if the relationship is formalized. I stared at him. Formalized. Luca's eyes cut to the man, sharp enough to shut him up, but the damage was done. I looked back at Luca. So that is it? Turn me into a cleaner headline? His jaw locked. No one is deciding anything tonight. He dismissed the room with one look, but the humiliation stayed behind. Beat 3 came an hour later in the west hallway, where Vivian was waiting like she had known exactly when I would break. She held a glass of white wine and wore composure like a weapon. You still have time, she said. Take the money. Leave before Luca's world closes around you completely. I should have kept walking. Instead I stopped. You really think this is kindness? She smiled, small and polished. No. I think it is realism. Men like Luca marry alliances, not accidents. That word hit harder now. Accident. Not woman. Not mother. Accident. I stepped closer than she expected. And yet he never asked you to stay away from me. Her expression flickered. Brief. Mean. There. I saw it. Not confidence. Threat. Beat 4 arrived in the form of a sealed envelope delivered to my room before midnight. No note. Just cash and a card with one line typed across the front. Disappear before things get uglier. My hands went cold. This was not gossip anymore. Not just image war. Someone wanted me gone badly enough to pay for it. I did not need Luca to tell me that. But when I turned the card over, I saw one detail that made my whole body go still. Embossed in the corner was the crest of a foundation Vivian shared publicly. She had not just come after my pride. She had reached for my life. And for the first time, I realized her smile had never been the real threat. It was the confidence of a woman who believed Luca would still choose her world over mine. I found Luca in the downstairs office before sunrise, still in yesterday's suit, still looking like a man who had never once let the world catch him off balance. Beat 1 began when I dropped the envelope on his desk and watched his eyes land on the foundation crest. For 1 second, nothing moved. Then everything in him went cold. Where did you get this? He asked. Not suspicious this time. Dangerous. I crossed my arms to stop my hands from shaking. It was delivered to my room. Cash. A threat. And your precious Vivian's name stamped in the corner like she wanted credit. Luca picked up the card, read the line once, and his jaw locked. So hard I thought it might crack. You should have brought this to me immediately. I almost laughed. Really? After the last few weeks, you want to complain about timing? His gaze cut to mine. Sharp. Then steadied. Claire. Just my name. Low. Controlled. But different. I hated that I heard the difference. Beat 2 came when I told him everything. The hallway conversation. Vivian's offer. Her calling me an accident. The legal hotline. The feeling that every move around me was being watched and priced and planned. I expected him to question part of it. To hold back. To protect his old alliances first. He did not. He listened. Every word. When I finished, the silence between us felt unfamiliar. Not hostile. Focused. Luca set the card down with terrifying care. You should have told me about her first offer. And you should have told me about the custody drafts. That landed. He did not look away. Fair. One word. No defense. No spin. It hit harder than an argument would have. Beat 3 changed the shape of the room. Luca pulled a folder from a locked drawer and spread 3 photos across the desk. Event donor list. Foundation board page. An offshore charity shell I did not understand. Vivian does not move money directly, he said. But these names do. Same circle tied to 2 of Vittorio's legal fronts. I stared at the pages, then at him. So she is part of it. She is close enough to it that I should have cut this off sooner. There it was. Not just trust. Regret. Real and late and dangerous. My chest tightened for a different reason this time. You believe me, I said before I could stop myself. Luca looked at me like the question insulted something deeper than pride. Immediately, he said. The word hit so clean it almost hurt. Beat 4 came softer than any of the others, which made it worse. We stood on opposite sides of the desk, finally looking at the same enemy instead of each other. Luca slid the envelope back into evidence plastic and said, From now on, you tell me when someone reaches for you. I should have resisted. Instead I heard myself say, then stop giving me reasons to think I cannot. His expression shifted. Slightly. Enough. I am trying, he said. It was the most honest thing he had ever given me. And for one reckless second, hope moved again. Then a knock cut through the room. One of Luca's men stepped in, face tight. Boss. We found Ethan. Relief hit first. Then the rest of the sentence. He is hurt. And he keeps repeating the same thing. He says the baby was the target from the beginning. Ethan looked smaller in the medical room than he ever had in my life. Beat 1 began with me standing in the doorway, one hand pressed over my stomach, staring at the brother who had wrecked everything and still somehow managed to look like the victim of his own choices. His face was pale. His voice barely held. But when he saw me, panic sharpened him fast. Claire, he said, trying to sit up. Listen to me this time. Luca stayed beside me, silent and cold enough to freeze the air. Ethan's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. They were never just moving debt, he said. They were building pressure points. First your name. Then the pregnancy. Then the heir. My whole body went rigid. Stop saying it like that, I snapped. Like my baby is a move on a chessboard. Ethan swallowed hard. That is exactly what they made it. Beat 2 hit when he finally explained the shape of the trap. Vittorio's people had wanted leverage over Luca long before I ever walked into that hotel. A scandal. A compromised heir. A woman vulnerable enough to isolate, discredit, or erase if necessary. I felt sick in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy. This was never random. Not Ethan's debt. Not the transfers. Not the cameras. They had built a road and pushed me down it. I was collateral, I whispered. Ethan shook his head, eyes wet now. At first. Then when they found out, you were proof of concept. Luca went still beside me. Too still. That was how his rage worked. Not loud. Precise. Terrifying. Names, he said. Give me names. Beat 3 came with one more crack in Ethan's fear. He looked at Luca, then at me, like he knew whatever he said next would burn the last bridge left. Vivian met with one of the account handlers twice, he said. I saw her at the Tribeca office. She used a different last name, but I know it was her. My pulse jumped hard. There it was. The link. Not rumor. Not instinct. Something real. Luca's eyes darkened, and for the first time since I met him, I saw what happened when control stopped being enough. Are you sure? I asked. Ethan nodded too fast. I would swear to it. He reached for my wrist with trembling fingers. Claire, I am sorry. I did not know they would take it this far. I wanted to believe that mattered. It did not. Sorry did not unbuild the trap around my child. Beat 4 landed with the cruelest truth of all. Ethan looked past me, not at Luca this time, but at the wall, at nothing, and said, barely above a whisper, if they could not get rid of you before the baby mattered, the next move was always going to be after the heir. The room went dead silent. No one breathed. I felt Luca shift beside me, not closer, not farther, but changed. Colder. Strategic. Terrible in a way that made fear and relief blur together until I could not separate them. Because now I knew the truth. My child had been a target from the beginning. And judging by the look in Luca's eyes, whoever came for us next was not just starting a scandal anymore. They were starting a war. By sunset, Luca had moved me again. Beat 1 began with the sound of gravel under tires and a lake opening up beyond the windshield like a secret too beautiful to trust. The house sat alone at the edge of dark water, cedar and glass and silence, miles from the estate, miles from the city, miles from everyone who had touched my life and poisoned it. Where are we? I asked, though I already knew the answer was nowhere I could leave easily. Luca got out first and came around to my door. Somewhere only 5 people know. I hated the relief that moved through me anyway. I stepped onto the stone path and looked at him. Did you bring me here to protect me or hide me? His expression did not change. Right now, those are the same thing. Beat 2 hid inside the lake house, where every room felt quieter than the last, like the whole place had been built for truths people only told in low voices. Luca handed his phone to one of his men. Issued 3 short orders, then dismissed everyone for the night. No staff. No shadows at the door. Just us. I stood in the kitchen with my arms folded over myself and said, "You look like a man preparing for war." He poured water, not whiskey, and slid the glass toward me. I am. The answer landed hard. Because of Vittorio? I asked. Because someone turned you into leverage before I understood the board. Before I understood the board. Not before I cared. Not before I failed you. Still, it was the closest thing to regret I had heard from him, and it cracked something in me I had been holding shut for weeks. Beat 3 came later, after the sky turned black over the water and the house settled into that strange, intimate quiet only isolation can create. I found Luca on the back deck, standing at the railing in shirt sleeves, looking out across the lake like he trusted the dark more than daylight. Did you ever have this before? I asked. He glanced at me. What? Peace. He let out one breath. Almost a laugh. Almost not. No, I leaned against the railing beside him, careful to keep space between us. Me neither. That was how it started. Not romance. Not softness. Just 2 damaged people standing still long enough to stop pretending. He told me his mother died when he was too young to remember her voice. I told him my father used to call me stubborn like it was a compliment. He said he learned early that love made people visible to enemies. I looked out over the black water and said, I learned early that trusting the wrong person can ruin your whole life. Silence followed. Deep. Honest. It did not feel empty. Beat 4 was the most dangerous one. I should have gone inside when the air changed. I did not. Luca turned toward me fully then, and in the dark his face looked less like power and more like restraint stretched too tight. Claire, he said, low enough to feel more than hear. I looked up before I could stop myself. My heart was already moving in the wrong direction. What? For one impossible second, I thought he might say it. Not strategy. Not protection. Something real. Instead he held my gaze, jaw tight, and looked away first. Nothing, he said. But the word came out rough, like it cost him. I stood there after he went inside, staring at the lake and hating the truth I could no longer outrun. I did not feel safer because the house was hidden. I felt safer because he was in it. And that terrified me more than anything that had come for me yet. The proof I was starting to trust Luca came from the wrong drawer. Beat 1 began the next morning in the upstairs office of the lake house, where I was looking for a charger and found a leather folder half hidden beneath a stack of financial reports. I should have closed it. I did not. Inside was a draft agreement dated months earlier, before I ever entered Luca's life. A marriage strategy. Vivian's name. Political consolidation. Asset protection language. Then another page clipped behind it, newer, colder, worse. Contingency provisions regarding public maternal instability and succession protection. My pulse turned violent. I read the lines twice, then a third time, because surely I had misunderstood. But the words stayed sharp. If scandal escalates, formal alliance remains preferred outcome. Preferred. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. Last night on the deck, I had almost believed the silence between us meant something. This folder told me exactly what it meant. I was not a woman he had chosen. I was the complication that interrupted the future he had already planned. Beat 2 hit when Luca walked in and found me holding the pages. His whole body went still. Where did you get that? He asked. Not angry. Careful. That somehow hurt more. I lifted the document between us. You tell me. He took one step forward. Claire, let me explain the context. I laughed. One broken sound. Context? Is that what you call contingency custody language and a backup bride? His jaw tightened. Those drafts were never executed. But they existed. The room went quiet except for my own breathing, too fast, too thin. He reached for the papers. I pulled them back. Do not, I said. Do not touch me like this is a misunderstanding. Beat 3 came ugly and fast. I left the office before he could stop me and locked myself in the guest room with every thought I had been trying not to think. Vivian was right. Men like Luca build futures with strategy first and feeling second, if feeling appears at all. The baby moved from abstract fear to real weight under my hand, and something fierce rose up inside me. I grabbed my phone and called the legal nonprofit from Brooklyn. I need the consultation, I said the second a woman answered. As soon as possible. She offered a discreet meeting through a trusted contact in Westchester. I said yes before fear could catch up. Beat 4 landed when I hung up and saw, through the bedroom window, one of the lake house security men speaking urgently into his earpiece while looking straight toward this wing. Then my phone buzzed once with a blocked message. Location received. My blood went cold. I had not just reached for help. I had just let someone else find me. The woman who lured me out of the lake house sounded kind, efficient, and exactly like someone from the legal nonprofit in Brooklyn. That should have been my first clue. Beat 1 began with her voice on the phone saying, "We have your Westchester contact ready." But Ethan Bennett regained consciousness for a moment and asked that Claire be brought first. He says he has names. My whole body locked. Ethan. Names. Proof. I should have gone to Luca. I know that now. But betrayal does not make you careful. It makes you desperate for one thing that feels like your own decision. I told the guard at the front hall I needed air. I took the side path down to the service drive. A gray sedan waited where no car should have been. 10 minutes, I told myself as I got in. Get the names. Get out. The driver said nothing. Neither did the woman in the passenger seat. By the time I realized we were not heading toward any hospital, the doors had already locked. Beat 2 hid in the form of a private estate hidden behind iron gates and legal-looking calm. No guns. No shouting. Just money, silence, and the kind of controlled power that never has to prove itself loudly. They led me into a formal sitting room with cream walls and cold light. Then Vittorio Moretti walked in wearing a navy suit and the expression of a man who believed every room should rise for him. Claire, he said, as if we were family at a luncheon instead of enemies in a trap. You look frightened. That is unfortunate. I invited you here to solve a problem. I stayed standing. You lied to get me here. He gave me a small smile. No. I merely used urgency. Luca does the same thing. I hated that comparison because part of me could not fully deny it. Beat 3 came when he laid 3 documents on the table between us. Legal language. Succession language. Recognition language. Sign these, Vittorio said. A simple clarification that your child has no claim to family leadership, assets, or public recognition. In return, you disappear safely. Quietly. Generously compensated. My hand flew to my stomach on instinct. You want me to erase my baby before he is even born. Vittorio's expression did not change. I want to protect the family from instability. I laughed once, sharp and shaking. You mean you want to protect yourself? He leaned back, completely unbothered. Luca cannot protect what he cannot control, and you, my dear, have become very difficult to control. The truth in that sentence made me sick because it sounded too much like the language Luca himself used when he was frightened. But fear does not turn wrong into right. I pushed the papers away. I am not signing anything. Beat 4 landed with the final turn of the knife. Vittorio folded his hands and looked at me like I was a long case he had already solved. Think carefully. This is the most civil offer you will receive. I lifted my chin even though my pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it. Then you can keep your offer. For the first time, something cold flashed under his polish. You should have taken the easier way. The door behind me clicked shut. Not slammed. Just locked. Final. I looked around the room, at the sealed windows, the silent guards outside the glass, the papers still waiting on the table, and understood the real trap at last. I had not been brought here to negotiate. I had been brought here to disappear until I gave them the one thing they wanted. And somewhere beyond these walls, Luca still did not know where I was. The first thing I heard after Vittorio left was one of the guards outside my door saying Luca's name like a curse. Beat 1 began with that. Not hope. Not relief. A threat measured in another man's fear. I moved closer to the locked door and held my breath. He traced the Shell property chain, one guard muttered. He is cutting through every holding company. The second one answered lower. And he just had the donor accounts frozen. My pulse slammed hard enough to hurt. Luca knew. Not where I was yet, maybe, but enough. I should have felt only relief. Instead, guilt cut through it too. I had left the lake house without telling him. I had believed forged context over the man who had stood between me and every threat so far. Then I remembered the papers. The custody language. The marriage draft. The confusion came roaring back. Beat 2 hit an hour later when the door opened and Vittorio returned, smoother than ever, like pressure only improved his posture. Your refusal has complicated things, he said. I stayed seated this time, one hand over my stomach, refusing to give him the image of a frightened girl standing on command. Good, I said. Something in his smile thinned. Luca has always had a weakness for turning inconvenience into spectacle. I had hoped he would handle this quietly. I looked straight at him. You mean you hoped he would abandon me? Vittorio let the silence sit. I mean he is tearing through alliances to reach you. Freezing accounts. Pressuring partners. Burning years of careful arrangement for a woman he cannot safely keep. That landed harder than I wanted. Not because I trusted Vittorio. Because I did not. Men like him weaponize truth by wrapping it around lies. Still, the image would not leave me. Luca cutting through his own world for me. For us. Beat 3 came with the final break. Vittorio placed his phone on the table and slid it toward me. A photo filled the screen. Vivian leaving a downtown office with 2 men I recognized from the offshore documents Luca showed me. Different day. Same people. Same war. She was never the architect, Vittorio said. Only useful. My stomach turned. You expect me to thank you for exposing your accomplice? No, he said calmly. I expect you to understand that everyone around Luca is expendable when power shifts. He leaned forward slightly. Including you. I should have looked away. I did not. Then why am I still here? That was when his composure cracked just enough to show the truth underneath. Because Luca is making himself impossible to reason with. Beat 4 arrived like thunder held inside a human body. The front gate alarm did not blare. It pulsed once through the walls. Then the house shifted. Footsteps. Voices. One guard swore. Another ran past the door. Vittorio straightened slowly, all polish gone now. Real irritation. Real concern. He looked at me and, for the first time, stopped pretending this was still a negotiation. He should have stayed within the family channels, he said. The sentence barely landed before the study doors somewhere down the hall slammed open and a voice I knew too well cut clean through the house. Cold. Furious. Controlled in the most dangerous possible way. You took what is mine to protect. My heart kicked so hard it stole the air from my lungs. Luca had found me. And judging by the silence that followed his voice, he had not come here to bargain. The door opened 3 seconds after I heard Luca's voice, and every argument I had prepared died the second I saw his face. Beat 1 began there. Not with relief. With impact. He stood in the doorway in a dark coat, jaw tight, eyes locked on me first and everything else second, like the rest of the house could burn as long as I was still standing. Claire. Just my name. Low. Controlled. But it hit harder than shouting ever could. One of Vittorio's men moved like he intended to delay us. Luca did not even look at him. Move. The word landed with such finality that the man actually stepped back. I should have felt rescued. Instead my chest tightened with anger, confusion, and the terrible instinct to trust him all at once. You took your time, I said, because pride is cruel and I still had some left. Luca crossed the room fast then, stopping only when he was close enough for me to feel the heat of him. You left without telling me. Not soft. Not forgiving. But his hands checked my shoulders, my face, the line of my arm, like his body needed proof before his mind would believe it. Beat 2 hit the second we were back inside the black car pulling away from the estate. No spectacle. No victory speech. Just speed, silence, and the sound of my pulse refusing to settle. Luca sat across from me this time instead of beside me. One hand braced against the leather seat, gaze fixed on me like if he looked away I might disappear again. I found documents, I said first, because if I did not speak now, I might lose the nerve. The marriage strategy. The custody language. I thought, my throat tightened. I thought I was just a contingency you had not solved yet. He went still. Then reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out the same folder I had seen. Those were draft blocks, he said. Old ones. The marriage agreement with Vivian was prepared by advisors before I shut it down. The contingency language was drafted after your stress scare because my legal team plans for everything. I should have told you that directly. I stared at him, breathing too fast. You let me believe the worst. Yes, he said. No excuse. No deflection. And someone used that silence against us. Beat 3 came harder because now the truth had shape. Luca laid out the rest with that brutal precision of his. The folder had been left where I would find it. The timing of the intercepted call. The blocked message after my legal contact. The shell property that only someone inside the wider circle could route quickly. You were guided toward the wrong conclusion, he said. Not because you are naive. Because the trap was built to make mistrust feel rational. I looked down at my hands, ashamed in a way I hated. I believed them. You believed what I made possible, he said quietly. That landed harder than blame would have. I looked up at him then. Really looked. He was exhausted. Furious. Honest in that stripped-down way fear sometimes forces out of people who hate vulnerability more than pain. Beat 4 arrived when the car turned onto the private road back towards safety and Luca shifted closer, not enough to crowd me, just enough to make the air change. Claire, he said, voice rougher now, next time you think I am using you, ask me before you run from me. My eyes burned. And next time you think control is the same thing as trust, stop and remember where that gets us. Silence followed. Not empty. Not easy. Just real. Luca held my gaze for one long second and nodded once. Fair. The word should have calmed me. It almost did. Then a sharp cramp cut low across my abdomen, sudden enough to steal my breath. My hand flew to my stomach. Luca saw it instantly. Everything in him changed. Claire, he said, already moving, already gone cold with fear. I tried to answer. Another cramp hit harder. And in that brutal second, with the truth finally clear between us, I realized something far worse might be coming for us before trust even had time to heal. The first apology Luca ever gave me happened in the back of a speeding car while I was trying not to panic for our child. Beat 1 began with his hand wrapped around mine so tightly I could feel the strain in his control. Look at me, Claire, he said, voice low and steady even as the car cut through the dark toward a secure hospital wing. Breathe with me. I wanted to stay angry. I wanted to remind him that trust came too late when fear had already done its damage. But another sharp cramp stole the air from my lungs, and all I could do was hold on. I am sorry, he said then, and that nearly undid me more than the pain. Luca Moretti did not apologize. He calculated. He contained. He commanded. But now his eyes were fixed on me with nothing strategic left in them. I should have told you everything. I should have trusted you sooner. Beat 2 hit under bright hospital lights and the cold smell of antiseptic. Doctors moved fast. Questions came faster. Stress level. Pain scale. Timing. Monitoring. Luca stayed beside the bed until a nurse physically pushed him back a step. I looked at him through the blur and saw terror stripped clean of pride. The baby still has a heartbeat, the doctor said, and every muscle in my body gave way at once. Relief hit so hard it hurt. Luca closed his eyes for one brief second, then opened them and came right back to me. You hear that? He said. He is still fighting. Our son had become real in that moment in a way that changed the whole room. Beat 3 came later, when the immediate crisis eased and the monitors steadied and the world finally stopped spinning long enough for truth to get through. Luca sat beside my bed in silence until I said, I am sorry too. He looked up sharply. For what? My throat tightened. For running. For believing the worst without giving you the chance to explain. His jaw flexed once. You had reason. Maybe, I said. But that is not the same as wanting it to be true. Something shifted in his face then. Smaller than a smile. Bigger than relief. I looked down at my hand in his and said the one thing I could not keep back anymore. I know I was never just the mother of your child. Luca went very still. Then he leaned closer, close enough that his voice changed. No, he said. You never were. Beat 4 arrived before the moment could settle into anything safe. The obstetrician stepped back into the room with a tighter expression this time and a new chart in her hand. Claire, the baby is stable for now, but I need you both to understand something. If these contractions come back stronger, we may be facing an early delivery. My whole body went cold. Luca's grip on my hand tightened again, no hesitation now, no distance left to hide inside. We had finally told the truth. And the very next second, fate gave us something bigger to fear. The promise Luca made me in the hospital did not sound romantic. It sounded like war. Beat 1 began before sunrise, when the contractions returned hard enough to drag a cry out of me before I could bite it back. The room changed instantly. Nurses moved faster. Monitors sharpened into noise. The obstetrician took one look at the strip and said, "We may not be able to stop this." Luca was at my side before the sentence finished. Not at the door. Not in the hall making calls. Beside me. His hand found mine so fast it felt like instinct instead of choice. "Stay with me," he said, and for once it was not a command. It was a plea dressed like one. I wanted to be brave. Instead I whispered the truth. "I am scared." His jaw tightened, but he did not look away. "So am I." Beat 2 hit when one of his men stepped into the room with a face built for bad news. He kept his voice low, but I still heard enough. Emergency petition. Succession hold. Vittorio's people were using the hospital crisis to challenge the baby's recognition before he was even born. I closed my eyes and almost laughed from the cruelty of it. Even here. Even now. Luca turned, cold again in an instant, and said, "Handle it." The man hesitated. "They want you in person." Luca did not even blink. "Then they can wait." That landed in me harder than anything tender could have. He was choosing this room. Choosing me. Choosing our son before power, before politics, before the machinery of his name. Beat 3 came when the pain eased just enough for clarity to get through. I looked at him and said, "Do not let our child grow up inside a lie." He leaned closer, forehead nearly touching mine, all that terrible control narrowed down to one raw human truth. "He will not," Luca said. "No one erases you. No one erases him." 4 sentences. Simple. Absolute. They felt bigger than vows. Bigger than love, even. Love could still frighten him. This did not. This was decision. This was claim without ownership. This was Luca Moretti drawing the line he would burn the world to defend. Beat 4 arrived with the doctor stepping back to the bedside, expression calm but urgent. "Claire, we need to prepare for early delivery if the contractions do not ease in the next hour." My whole body went cold and hot at once. Luca's thumb pressed against the inside of my wrist, steady, grounding, present. I looked at him and saw the truth with a clarity that hurt. We were past misunderstanding now. Past contingency. Past strategy pretending not to be feeling. Whatever came next would not be clean or easy or safe. But when another contraction tore through me and Luca tightened his grip instead of letting go, I understood the real terror at last. We were no longer waiting to see whether this child would change everything. He already had. And if our son came early, he would be born straight into the final battle for his name. My son entered the world in a room full of machines, fear, and one man who looked like he would tear heaven apart if this child stopped breathing. Beat 1 began with the doctor saying, "It is time," and every voice after that turning into fragments around me. Push. Breathe. Again. Luca stayed at my side through all of it, his hand locked around mine so tightly I knew I would bruise later and love the ache anyway. I had never seen him helpless before. Not really. But there, under hospital lights, with our son arriving too soon into a life already under siege, Luca Moretti looked stripped down to something raw and human and terrified. Then one sharp cry cut through the room, and everything in me broke open at once. Relief. Shock. Love so fast it felt like grief. "You have a son," the doctor said, and I started crying before they even placed him in my arms. Beat 2 hit when Luca saw the baby. Our baby. Small. Furious. Alive. He stood there for one suspended second like the entire world had just shifted under his feet and he was too proud, too stunned, too undone to admit it. Then the nurse guided the bundle toward him, and Luca took our son with hands so careful it nearly destroyed me. This man who moved through the world like nothing could shake him looked down at that tiny face and lost the last of his distance without saying a word. I watched it happen. The cold edges. The iron control. The belief that love was always leverage. All of it cracked in silence. Luca touched one finger to the baby's fist, and when our son curled around it, Luca let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "He is strong," he said, voice rougher than I had ever heard it. I smiled through tears. "He gets that from me." For the first time in weeks, something close to warmth flickered through Luca's face. Stubborn too. Beat 3 came in the quiet after. I held our son against my chest while Luca sat beside the bed, one hand resting lightly near the baby's back like he still needed proof this was real. The room had softened. The war had not. A knock at the door cut through the peace, and one of Luca's most trusted men stepped in with the look of someone who hated being the messenger. "The family council has been called," he said. "Emergency session. They want a ruling on succession recognition now." I closed my eyes for 1 second, because of course they did. Of course the world would not let us have even an hour before trying to turn our son into a battlefield again. Beat 4 landed when Luca stood, every trace of softness retreating everywhere except his eyes. He looked at me first. Then at the baby. Then back at the man in the doorway. "Tell them I am coming," he said. The room changed instantly. Father became heir. Heir became king. But when he leaned down and pressed one careful kiss to my forehead before he left, the truth stayed behind like a promise. We were not just a scandal anymore. Not just a trap, or leverage, or a contingency no one planned for. We were a family now. Which meant the next fight would not be about whether our son mattered. It would be about whether Luca was ready to make the whole world kneel before that truth. 3 days after giving birth, I walked into Luca's family council with our son in my arms and every eye in that room already judging whether either of us deserved to exist in their world. Beat 1 began the second the doors opened. Long table. Dark wood. Older men in tailored suits. Women with perfect posture and colder eyes. Vittorio sat near the center like age and entitlement alone should have made him king. Luca stood at the far end, waiting for me, not surprised I came. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. A murmur moved through the room when they saw the baby. Scandal had become flesh. Vittorio rose first. This meeting concerned succession, not spectacle. I held my son closer and kept walking. Then stopped mistaking the truth for a spectacle. The room went still. Good. Let them hear me before they bury me under their version of events. Beat 2 hit when Vittorio began his case. He spoke in polished words about instability, public embarrassment, reckless timing, the danger of recognizing an heir born from scandal. He never said my name unless he had to. I knew that game now. Remove the woman, weaken the child. Erase the mother, control the future. But this time Luca's legal team came prepared. Ethan's recovered drive. The shell companies. The account trails. Photos linking Vivian's circle to offshore handlers. Donor records tied to the media leak. One by one, the lies lost their expensive perfume and started smelling like fear. Someone near the end of the table muttered, "You used the pregnancy as leverage." Vittorio did not answer fast enough. That hesitation did more damage than any shout could have. Beat 3 came when Luca looked at me, just once, and did not step in. He gave me the floor. That choice changed everything. I stood there still sore, still tired, still learning how to breathe around love and exhaustion and fury all at once, and I spoke for myself. "You called me a liability. A scandal. An accident. But I was threatened, bought at, lied to, followed, cornered, and still I did not surrender my child to any of you." My voice shook once. Then steadied. "You want to talk about instability? Fine. Look at the people who built traps for a pregnant woman because they were afraid of a baby." Silence spread through the room like a stain. No one could dress that truth up into policy. Beat 4 landed when Vittorio finally snapped and called me manipulative, opportunistic, dangerous. Luca moved then. Slow. Final. Terrible in the way only real power can be. "Enough," he said. One word. The entire room answered it with quiet. He set both hands on the back of his chair and looked directly at Vittorio. "You do not get to define her after what you did." I felt the shift before anyone spoke. The room had already turned. Not fully. Not safely. But enough. Enough for fear to start moving in the wrong direction. Enough for me to understand this was no longer about whether I belonged. It was about whether Luca was willing to end this in front of everyone. And when he straightened and stepped toward the head of the table, I knew the final choice had arrived. The room had already turned against Vittorio before Luca ever spoke again. Beat 1 began with silence. The dangerous kind. The kind powerful men use when they realize the outcome they planned is slipping out of their hands. Luca stepped to the head of the table and looked at each person there like he was measuring exactly how much fear they deserved. "Vittorio Moretti is stripped of all advisory authority effective immediately," he said. No raised voice. No theatrics. Just a sentence that landed like a locked door. Vittorio pushed back his chair. "You do not have unilateral power to make that decision." Luca did not even glance at him. "I do now." The legal counsel at Luca's right slid a folder across the table. Emergency authorization. Frozen fronts. Board support. Internal signatures. Every back channel. Vittorio thought he still owned had already been cut out from under him. I held our son closer and watched the old king realize he had not lost because he lacked power. He had lost because Luca had finally decided to stop sharing it. Beat 2 hit when one of the elder women near the far end said the thing they all had been circling. And the girl? Girl. Not mother. Not Claire. Just the smallest possible version of me. Luca turned then. Slowly. Fully. Her name is Claire Bennett. The air changed. And she is not a scandal I am managing. She is the woman I chose. My breath caught so hard it hurt. No one moved. No one even pretended to. He kept going, each word cleaner than the last. My son will be recognized in full. Publicly. Legally. Permanently. No future challenge to his name, his blood, or his place will be entertained. I had imagined being defended. I had imagined being protected. I had never let myself imagine this. Not because I did not want it. Because wanting it had always felt too dangerous. Beat 3 came when Vittorio made his last mistake. He laughed. Bitter. Small. Desperate in a way power hates becoming. "You would throw away stability for a woman from nowhere?" Luca's face did not change. "No," he said. "I am throwing away men who confuse cruelty for stability. Something inside my chest broke open then. Not because he had one. Because he made it cost him something. Alliances. Expectations. Old plans. He was not choosing me in private where it was easy. He was choosing me where everyone could see the damage and know he accepted it. That was what made it real. Beat 4 landed outside the council chamber, where members of the press had already gathered after the emergency session leaked. Cameras rose the second Luca stepped into the hall. Flashbulbs. Questions. Noise. The whole ugly machine that had fed on me from the beginning. He reached for my hand in front of all of them, lacing his fingers through mine like hesitation had finally died. Then he looked at the cameras and said, "Claire Bennett is not a mistake in my life. She is my family. Our son is my heir. Write that correctly." The hallway went dead still before the questions exploded again. But I barely heard them. Because under all that noise, all that light, all that public claiming, one truth was finally louder than fear. I had been chosen in the one place no lie could survive. And standing there with Luca beside me and our son safe in my arms, I realized the only thing left unfinished was the one answer that still mattered to me most. He had chosen us. But could I really choose a future inside his world and mean it with my whole heart? 6 months after Luca chose us in front of the whole city, I stood in a sunlit office with our son on my hip and signed the final papers for the Bennett Foundation. Beat 1 began there, not in a mansion, not in a council room, not in a trap built by powerful men, but in something I built with my own hands. The foundation offered legal help and emergency support to pregnant women caught in financial coercion, housing loss, and custody threats. Women like the one I used to be. I looked down at my signature and felt the strangest thing of all. Peace. Not the fragile kind that waits for danger to return. Real peace. Mrs. DeLuca walked in with the baby's blanket and smiled. "He has your stubborn face." I laughed softly. "Good. He will need it." Through the office window, I could see Luca outside stepping out of a black car, still carrying power like it answered to him first. The difference now was simple. I no longer felt swallowed by his world. I had carved out my own place inside it. Beat 2 hit when Luca came in and found me holding a stack of case files with one hand and our son with the other. He stopped in the doorway and looked at me the same way he had looked at our baby for the first time. Like the sight of us still undid something in him he could not quite defend against. "You skipped lunch," he said. I smiled. "That is your opening line?" He crossed the room and kissed our son's forehead first. Then mine. Quiet. Sure. Earned. My opening line changes when I am trying not to interrupt the most impressive woman I know. That should have felt impossible coming from Luca Moretti. It did not. That was the point. We had fought all the way past impossible. I handed the baby to Mrs. DeLuca when she offered, and the room softened around the silence that followed. Luca reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. My pulse jumped anyway. "Do not panic," he said, and I laughed before I could stop myself. "That is not comforting." His mouth almost curved. "Almost. Then let me try again." Beat 3 was the ending I never would have trusted at the start. Luca opened the box, but did not kneel. He knew me better than that now. No spectacle. No pressure. No audience. Just truth. "Claire," he said, voice low and steady, "I am not asking because of scandal, duty, our son, or the life we already built. I am asking because you are the woman I would still choose with none of those reasons left." My eyes burned instantly. He kept going. "You can say no. You can make me wait. But the choice has to be yours." There it was. The thing I had needed all along. Not protection. Not power. Choice. I took the ring with shaking fingers and smiled through tears that finally felt clean. "Yes," I whispered. Then stronger. "Yes. Because this time I am choosing too." He exhaled like he had been holding that breath since the night we met. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, Luca slid the ring onto my finger, our son started crying for both of us at once, and for the first time, my future did not feel like something that had happened to me. It felt like home.